Good morning, students. In the last class, we learned what pedagogical shift is and the nature of science, nature of knowledge, and the growth of scientific knowledge. Today, we shall focus on the pedagogical shift in learners, learning, and teachers, assessment, science curriculum, and scientific inquiry. Pedagogical shift with respect to the learners. Learners come to the classroom with their existing ideas, the ideas which are temporary and unstable. Many of these ideas are deep rooted in their socio-cultural settings. Few ideas are individual in nature and have similarities with ideas of many other learners. These are socially, culturally embedded, supported by language and the metaphors used to understand the phenomenon. Sometimes the ideas are very contrast and are at odds with the scientifically accepted ideas. So, the teacher's role here is to develop the habit of listening to learners. They must value the ideas in the learner's context. Learners are to be encouraged to critically evaluate their ideas and raise questions on established scientific understanding. Thus, the learner's role is to develop the skills of negotiation and mediation besides the ability to discover the alternate meaning. Now let us focus our attention on the pedagogical shift with respect to learning. In the context of learning, the focus of learning objectives has shifted from behaviorism to cognitivism to constructivism. A debate exists on the nature and the focus of learners' conceptions. This debate has two dimensions: the nature of students' learning and socio-cultural view of the explanations for the learner's ideas. First, the nature of students' learning and the nature of learning is compared to their intuitive conceptions. This can be explained from individual and social constructivist perspectives. The individual conceptual view of learning is highly personal and is a very broad approach theorized by Yoon Piaget, while the constructivist perspective is given by Lev Vygotsky, which is of social in nature. Vygotsky, who considered community at the centrality of knowledge production, he emphasized the role of conversation to challenge the model of discourse of science and the perspectives to interpret scientific evidences. This will provide a richer way of looking at the learner's world. Secondly, explanations generated for the learners in a socio-cultural view is known as situated cognition. Learners feel that the knowledge acquired in the classroom as school knowledge, while that they learn outside the classroom is general knowledge. So they compartmentalize the knowledge. Here, social constructivism and the situated cognitivist perspectives facilitate the learners in constructing knowledge. Now let us focus on the teachers. The child-centered pedagogy gives primacy to children's experiences, their voices, and active participation in a teaching learning process. This pedagogy nurtures learners' curiosity and provides conducive learning atmosphere with meaningful learning experiences. Thus, the teacher's role is to involve learners actively in the teaching learning process. The learner's capabilities and potentialities are viewed as dynamic, which will be developed through self experiences. So, teachers must encourage them to reflect and test their ideas with the peers and teachers. Here, the teacher uses multiple learning contexts drawn from life situations. Thus, a constructivist teacher is trained as a critical analyzer of syllabi and textbooks, besides being a reflective practitioner of teaching learning process. A major shift has occurred in the teacher's role from a source of knowledge to a facilitator of transforming knowledge and as a supporter in enhancing learning through multiple exposures and encouraging learners to continuously achieve educational goals. Now, the learners have taken the center stage. The teachers recognize that learners' viewpoints are sought and valued. They are motivated to learn as they discover their own ideas and also ask their own questions and try to find out answers for themselves. Thus, the teacher offers learners with the choices and options for learning besides inviting learners' ideas in teaching learning situations and accepting the multiple views of learning, even though they are irrational and not so natural. Here, the competencies of the learner, namely negotiation, mediation, dialogue, and argumentation, play a major role in the knowledge construction process. Now, let us see the pedagogical shift in terms of assessment. Assessment has three aspects: the purpose of assessment, mode of assessment, and criteria for assessment. The purpose of assessment is mainly to improve the teaching learning process and to review the learning objectives. To achieve this, routine activities and exercises are to be followed effectively. Assessment of the learners is in terms of their subject areas, attitudes to learning, interest, and the capability of self learning. Mode of assessment is criticized for its unfairness of administering the same type of test to all, which does not cater to the individual differences. Hence, assessment should be flexible and cover meaningful aspects of performance, such as the activities, experiments, journal writing, illustrations, peer evaluation, self evaluation, group work assessment, oral presentations, models, and portfolios, and other artifacts of learning. Learning indicators and the evaluation criteria provide a sense of ownership in learning. The criteria of assessment also have undergone a shift from testing rote memorization to understanding and application of the knowledge. Further, the examination centered classroom processes were replaced with learning centered classroom processes. Thus, the focus of assessment is on application type problems, and the problems are the questions demanding organization of thoughts into arguments which demonstrate the interpretative skills and critical thinking of the learners. Now, we will understand the pedagogical shift in the area of science curriculum and scientific inquiry. There are three approaches for the transaction of science curriculum in schools. In 1960s and 1970s, implicit approach was prevalent where students doing science felt they automatically understand the nature of science and scientific inquiry. This included the hands-on activities and the instruction of process skills such as observing, inferring, etc. What we understand by scientific inquiry today, the process skills that are learned only by engaging learners in the scientific investigations was missing in this implicit approach. So, to address this issue in the 1980s and 1990s, education is followed the historical approach. Here, the emphasis is through the study of history of science that learners understand nature of science and scientific inquiry. However, engaging the learners is missing for the development of scientific inquiry skills even in this historical approach. At present, we now follow the explicit reflective approach of curriculum transaction. This approach has come in response to the earlier two approaches which failed to account for scientific inquiry skills in the learners. The development of scientific inquiry skills is a well planned scientific endeavor in which the learners pose questions or to be answered through the methods used by scientists. Thus, inquiry as a teaching learning approach mean placing learners in situations that are very similar to that of scientists. The science curricula should engage the learners in raising questions and encouraging the investigations and the processes of science. So, science curriculum emphasizes the merging of classroom experiences with experiential construction of scientific knowledge outside the classroom. Thus, the present curriculum incorporates the shifts that are recommended by National Curriculum for Framework 2005 and the State Curriculum Framework 2011. The pedagogical shifts that have occurred due to the intervention of National Curriculum Framework 2005 are depicted in this table. The teacher centered approach is moved to learner centered teaching learning process. The fixed design process is shifted to flexible process of learning, and the teacher control of the classroom is shifted to control by the learners. The teacher's role of guidance and monitoring of learning is changed to facilitation, support, and encouragement for learning. The passive reception of learning is moved to active participation of the learners. Learning within the four walls of the classroom has been shifted to the learning in the wider social context and outside the classroom. Knowledge, which was viewed as given and fixed, is now being treated as evolving and changing continuously. So now we learn the knowledge as dynamic, which is not fixed. The focus of pedagogy, which was disciplinary, is shifted to the multiple disciplines and is educational in nature. The linear exposure of the content is now viewed as multiple and divergent. We can learn different types of knowledge from different experiences. So also the assessment, which was very short and few, shifted to the assessment from multiple aspects and continuous and comprehensive evaluation, which is multifarious and continuous. To sum up, the pedagogical shift has occurred with respect to the learners, learning, and teachers. The learner is the center of education, and their ideas and the context in which they originated are valued. The active participation of the learners is emphasized in a socio-cultural context. The teacher's role is to develop the habit of listening to the teachers. The purpose, mode, and criteria of assessment have also undergone a major shift. The multiple ways of assessing the student's learning is emphasized with the help of learning indicators. Three approaches of scientific curriculum and scientific inquiry were discussed, among which the only approach which develops scientific inquiry is the explicit and reflective approach to curriculum transaction. Scientific inquiry skills can be developed by actively engaging the learners in the situations which the scientists experienced. All these various pedagogical shifts have been implemented with the recommendations of National Curriculum Framework 2005 and State Curriculum Framework 2011. So, these are the various issues related to the pedagogical shift with respect to learners, learning, and teachers, assessment, the scientific curriculum, and scientific inquiry. Thank you. These are the various references which have gone into the preparation of this e-module. Thank you once again.